Good afternoon. My name is Tony Simmons and I represent Team New Zealand. I would like to thank everyone for watching, and a special thanks goes out to our CISO, Carl Olson. Today I will be giving a briefing on cyber operations and risk management. So let's get started. First up, identification of software assurance needs and expectations of the organization. Software assurance seeks to reduce or remove vulnerabilities to increase confidence that software can be used securely and effectively. Software assurance involves every element that has the potential to touch the software, and to be effective must take a holistic approach to both understanding the environment in which the software is developed and used, as well as the requirements for software performance. Therefore, it is important that software assurance needs are identified prior to the development of the software. The organization should perform threat modeling to determine the risk factors and perform security design reviews to try to avoid security problems. Description of the key attributes of the current software development lifecycle. The New Zealand government makes use of the waterfall methodology for its software development purposes. The model makes use of phases such as gathering and analysis, design implementation, testing, deployment, and maintenance. This methodology also follows the principles that the degree of client involvement in the waterfall model is very low. The documentation in the waterfall project is very strong because of low client involvement. Also, the principle of sequential stages is the main principle of waterfall. It is simple and complex at the same time. Developers and clients agree on what will be delivered early in the development lifecycle. The software can be designed completely and more carefully based upon a more complete understanding of all software deliverables. This provides a better software design with less likelihood of the piecemeal effect. Identification of any known supply chain risk. Supply chain management is the process of implementing strategies that are aimed at managing risk and lowering the possibility of modifications made by unauthorized personnel on both software and hardware during the acquisition process. These efforts are applied to minimize the impact of risks on business operations and the security of the infrastructure and data. The process first begins with identifying internal and external environments. Organizations may inadvertently overlook internal risks. These may include those posed by a rogue employee, as well as those posed by inadequate policies, strategies, or organizational structures. The external environment in which an enterprise works will pose different risks. For example, some suppliers will face meteorological risks, while others, because of their distance, may have greater transportation risks. Identification of vulnerabilities in the existing software used. A vulnerability can be an error in the way that user management occurs in the system, an error in the code, or a flaw in how it responds to certain requests. One common vulnerability allows an attack called an SQL injection. It works on websites that query databases, such as to search for keywords. Other programs that are supported by Java and Adobe Flash can be exploited because of numerous vulnerabilities in the various platforms. Sometimes the vulnerabilities are discovered by the software developers themselves, or users or researchers who alert the company that a fix is needed. But other times, hackers or government spy agencies figure out how to break into systems and don't tell the company. These weaknesses are called 0 days because the developer has had no time to fix them. As a result, the software or hardware has been compromised until a patch or fix can be created and distributed to users. Identification of software options that could meet the organization needs. The best way to identify software to meet needs is to map out the communication structure of your organization and to interview key members of your team. Ask questions such as, What do you think the number one objective for our business is? What role do you play in achieving that? How well prepared do you think you are of this? What resources do you need more of? What stops you from doing your job? How do you know when your job is done? And can you describe the latest analysis of your core business process? Next, identify the critical business processes that need to be reviewed by breaking down and rating the perceived risk in each problem. Rate these 1 to 5. Watch those with the greatest risk. Also determine the availability of continuous data for those risk areas. Once all of the processes have been reviewed, if a new software seems right for you, it is time to evaluate the tools available. Evaluation of supply chain options and recommendations for the organization. When organizations evaluate performance matrices, there are a number of characteristics that they should look for when selecting matrix that will help with their business decisions. First, make it easy to understand, meaning a good metric is one that can easily be understood by anyone that looks at it. It should be clear as to what the metric is actually measuring and how it is actually derived. Next, an important characteristic for a supply chain performance metric is that it is expressed by a value that is objective, i.e., derived from real data and not subjective. The metrics should also be easy to collect. Sometimes companies select complex performance metrics that are very time-consuming to collect and may require time to be taken away from line staff to prepare. This is counterproductive, and these types of metrics should be avoided. There are also categories of performance metrics when evaluating. They are time, cost, and quality. Explanation of the costs involved in the recommendations. Managing the cost of these recommendations is the value of your overall inventory and logistic expenses. That's all your CFO is going to want to know your supply chain leadership is managing. Supply chain management is uniquely situated to be the cost monitor in your organization. The cost analysis must also be accurate. Supply chain management needs to make sure the underlying data that drive on-time delivery reports and other supplier performance data is accurate. That requires audits of your internal process and audits at your suppliers. Finally, recommendations for contract language that would be used to ensure that supply chain systems, network, and operational security are met. The contract language is the manner in which the contents of the contract the organization will sign with other parties is displayed. In other words, the language used in the contract. It's recommended that you familiarize supply professionals with various aspects of law that affect their responsibilities. Also, apply basic requirements of contract formation and enforcement, and recognize rights and responsibilities of each party to a contract, and finally, identify issues relating to exercising contracting authority and the lack thereof. Thank you again for watching the briefing. Again, my name is Tony Simmons, representing Team New Zealand.